I'm 27. I have never had a problem with alcohol at all. I'm an Ivy League educated banker living in Manhattan trying to make a living. I don't drink by myself or on weeknights, but I still go out with friends almost every weekend. I'm just now reaching the age where, if I have about 4 more drinks, the next day I feel completely incapacitated and cannot get off the couch. In college, when I was 19 to 22, I remember going out, drinking 12 drinks, and waking up to take 2 ibuprofen tablets, drink electrolyte beverages, coffee, and still go to class. So I guess what I'm asking is, do hangovers increase linearly with age, or do they plateau? If they do not plateau, I have no idea how anyone over 40, including my father, can still drink. Story 1. Did you just say you were an Ivy League educated banker who lives in Manhattan trying to scratch out a living? Story 2. Best advice I ever had about drinking was to drink to make a good time better, not to try to fix a bad time. I used to party, but these days it's maybe twice a month. Alcohol is a way to be present in the moment, but this skill is important to know how to do sober, and skills take upkeep. Nowadays, grabbing a few beers with friends or my parents isn't odd. I find the reasons I was drinking were more answered by spiritual practice and accidental therapy, so I try to be more mindful when anxiety or some other inclination to drink arises. Once in a while, if the occasion arises, I'll have a proper night out, but that's like once every 3 months. Even then, I check in with myself as to why I'm reaching for another drink. If I don't like the answer, I chill. Story 3. I am 37 years old and do not drink alcohol. I have not consumed it for the past 10 years. This is not due to hangovers, but because I needed alcohol when I was younger and less comfortable with myself. Since I got a girlfriend, there has been no need to drink alcohol anymore. Story 4. I did not really start drinking until my 40s. In my teens, I would say the usual. In my 20s, I was a full-time student with 3 children. In my 30s, I was new in my career, and my children were involved in everything from dance to sports to science Olympiad. In my 40s, the children were older and doing their own things, so having a glass of wine with dinner was a real treat. In my 50s, the children were gone, and my spouse and I started to enjoy a cocktail after work and a bottle of wine with dinner. Now, in our mid-60s, we get buzzed every night, and I would say 45 drinks a week is not an exaggeration. I never feel awful in the morning, and my liver lab tests are quite healthy. I never had the overindulgent 20s and 30s, so I might have a few more miles on my liver even at my age. Story 5. I am 39 years old. I run a restaurant. With that said, I have about 2 very stiff drinks a night. I have told myself to cut down, but cheers. Story 6. I have never been an avid drinker but have had my moments when younger. I rarely ever drink now. Sometimes I will have a specialty beer or a shot of whiskey, and every time I regret it. It is poison to my body, and I am better off leaving it alone. Story 7. I am 20 years old and I only drink when I am playing pool with my friend, which is every 1 to 2 weeks. Most of the time, I have 2 to 3 beers and some double whiskeys. Story 8. 38. None over regular weeks. Socially only, which happens once every few weeks or sometimes months. I was a heavy drinker from ages 19 to 27 and a moderate drinker from 27 to 33. I have to admit I regret it. Story 9. It continues to get worse. I am 36 years old, a social drinker through high school, college, and my mid-20s. I had a child at 30 and realized alcohol could no longer be part of my lifestyle. If I have a drink or two late in the day, my sleep suffers, I wake up dehydrated, and I am unpleasant half the next day. Having 1 drink per month is a lot for me. I simply do not enjoy it anymore. I do recognize the social benefits, but you have to be honest about what it is: poison. Story 10. I stopped drinking in my mid-30s because 1 drink did nothing for me, but 2 drinks gave me a headache. There was no buzz or anything anymore. Story 11. As you age, your body changes, and recovery from alcohol's effects can be tougher unless you drink frequently enough to maintain a tolerance. Drinking frequently has other downsides. There is a reason it counts against you in the doctor's office or life insurance applications. I am 47 and rarely drink anymore. It has become a needless hassle for me as it can induce headaches quickly. I can have a beer or 2, but I have to follow it with water or risk feeling unwell. I do not miss it honestly. Story 12. I genuinely think my taste buds are affected because alcohol tastes unpleasant to me. Even the cocktails that my friends recommend, which taste like juice to them, taste bad to me. Story 13. I am a 38-year-old cook. Sometimes in the summer, when it is hot outside, I drink 1 or 2 low-alcohol beers per month. Occasionally, when I feel like it, I have a small glass or 2 of cherry vodka that I make myself. A few times a year, I also drink wine that I make. Story 14. Yes, hangovers increase with age, but you can manage them by drinking plenty of water when you consume alcohol. 1 glass of alcohol equals 1 glass of water. It helps. However, you should avoid getting drunk every weekend, as you lose a day off each time to recover. Story 15. I am 65 years old. The most alcohol I have consumed was 1 glass of wine in 10 years. Alcohol tastes revolting. Story 16. I was going to answer honestly, but I do not want to deal with people who never drink because they believe it is bad. The hangover situation depends on what you are drinking and your level of hydration during the event. I am 34 years old, and I have noticed that if I stick to hard liquor, I rarely experience hangovers. However, drinks with artificial sugars or anything mixed with soda or juice will immediately cause discomfort the next morning. Also, drinking water throughout the night helps a lot. Hangovers do not necessarily get worse, but your tolerance for the pain and discomfort the next morning definitely improves. Story 17. I am 60 years old, and alcohol left me about 12 years ago. I was going through a rough time in life, so I focused on my meditation practice and inner child work. As a side effect, I just stopped drinking one night and have never drunk again. I used to drink 2 bottles of single malt whiskey a week and had no intention of stopping. It just stopped. I did try once, honestly, a couple of years later, but my body just said no at the first taste. Where I live, not drinking is very odd indeed. I am happy enough being odd. Story 18. Late 30s, 0 alcohol. I can drink 2, maybe 3 drinks, but that's my limit. In my 20s, I could drink bottles and be okay. Age is a factor. Story 19. I've always self-regulated with alcohol. When I get a bit of a buzz, I stop entirely or slow down until the buzz goes away before drinking again. My goal is to never have a hangover because I hate them with a passion. Edit. I am in my mid-30s. Story 20. I am a 36-year-old former bartender. Some weeks I have 2 to 3 drinks. Other weeks, the boys come by my garage and we put back a case or 2 of beer. Lately, beer has been making me feel gross the next day. Now, if I go to a concert or something, I have a Jameson soda or gin and tonic, and I feel like $1,000,000 the next day. Hangovers definitely get worse with age. Story 21. Snooze. Lost me by the end of the first sentence. Not to be rude, just come on, now that's a weak opener. I'll answer and touch on the title question itself. I'm 40, drinking more than I should, but much less than I have in the last 20 years, with some improvement to go. Will I ever go completely dry? Probably not. Do I make the wisest decision possible in the moment when drinking? Absolutely. I just lost a very close friend who had just turned 32 because she went too hard early on, was hospitalized with warnings to slow down, but kept drinking at a high pace and she passed away. If you're 27 and asking, take a break and ask yourself this exact question in the mirror until you receive the answer you want to hear. It doesn't matter how much or how little others consume. What matters is you being in control of your own life, the master of your domain. Don't become a statistic. Also, don't contribute to giving the one industry we all rely on and dislike a bad reputation. Are you a 27-year-old Ivy League banker? Be the change we all want to see in this world. Story 22. I almost never drink unless it is a special occasion. I do enjoy a mild buzz, though. I can handle mixing beers and hard liquor with no problem, but at some point, I stop myself knowing how impaired I am. I have noticed that sugary drinks give me the worst hangovers because of the sugar itself and how the body processes it after alcohol consumption. So I tend to stay away from anything of that sort. Drinking enough water before sleeping will almost erase any hangover I have the following morning. Electrolyte brands such as Liquid 4 and Waterboy are good for recovery, but I honestly recommend just staying away from them. If you need salt, simply consume salt and drink water. Story 23. 38-year-old tech worker on the opposite coast here. I bartended for a while at fancy places for the money. It's hit and miss these days regarding hangovers. I can have 4 or 5 drinks and wake up the next morning feeling either awful or just fine. But yes, what I thought was a bad hangover in my 20s is a cakewalk now. I've had some hangovers, maybe after a friend's wedding, where if I had a gun nearby, I would think twice about it. Just kidding, but they really suck. You can drink water, have a hydration drink, eat a big meal, or take magnesium. Whatever. They all help only marginally. I can't find any rhyme or reason in my case, at least. I don't drink nearly as much anymore and quit for a while. I also never drank bartending because working and drinking do not mix. There's nothing worse than closing down a bar at 4 a.m., tired from a busy night, your buzz long gone, and a hangover setting in while you're trying to do inventory. You learn quickly that's a fool's game and those bartenders don't last, at least at good places. I also worked at a very high-end whiskey bar, and our clientele were always celebrities, sports stars, and millionaires. I often found myself serving customers who had already made it, and they naturally assumed drinking expensive whiskey was what you did, as a man at least. They just got sloppier over time, face turning red, and never sharper or better. I had a surgeon tell me he takes a steroid called prednisone before surgeries so he doesn't get the shakes. Story 24. I am 32 years old. I have a lot of liquor in my possession. Usually, I consume less than 1 drink per week, but I am about to go on vacation, so it will probably be 10 times that amount. Story 25. Rarely ever drink. Hangovers can creep up on you, but everyone is different. Some people feel terrible all the time, while others are fine regardless of age. If you are struggling with hangovers, try eating some pickles before going to bed or drinking pickle juice. Hangovers are caused by dehydration and a lack of electrolytes. The fastest way to recover is with an electrolyte solution such as Pedialyte or a saline solution, although administering saline to yourself while intoxicated can be difficult. This is based on personal experience. Story 26. I have a double old-fashioned every 3rd Friday while running Pathfinder 2nd Edition for the boys. Other than that, almost never. The beers I like are as expensive as mid-shelf bourbon, and the bourbon does not leave me feeling as terrible the next morning. Story 27. 12 drinks in one day would have probably killed me at any age. I did my heaviest drinking in my teens, blackouts, throwing up, hangovers. I figured out pretty quickly that I did not enjoy feeling like that. I took up smoking cannabis and never regretted it. No getting sick, no getting hurt, or making terrible decisions. I rarely had a drink in my 20s or 30s, but then in my 40s I started drinking a glass or 2 of red wine in the evenings. After a few years, I was having more like 4 or 5 glasses a night. I started to put on weight and feel unhealthy. I cut back significantly and then gave it up completely. I have not had any alcohol in about a year, and I do not plan to drink any time in the future. I will be 58 years old in a few days. I feel very good, fit, and in shape, by the way. I still use cannabis most days. Good luck. Story 28. At 19, I drink heavily at least one day of the weekend. During the week, the most I have is a beer with a friend. I could do that every day, but we have agreed not to overdo it. Story 29. 99% of the time, I only drink beer. I do not drink it to get a buzz, though. I drink it because I prefer beer over soda. I drink it daily, but not a lot, just a couple of beers a day. Story 30. I am 40 years old, and how much alcohol I drink depends largely on which shift I am working and the company I am with. Some weeks I do not drink at all. Today I have a day off and will probably drink 2 or 3 beers in the evening. Maybe once a month or so, with the right company, it can be more. I know when I have to stop or I will feel bad the next day. After drinking, before you go to bed, drink at least half a liter of water because alcohol dehydrates your body, which contributes to a hangover. Story 31. Yeah, it just gets worse. Eventually, I realized how stupid and pointless it was, and I willed myself to stop. I have not had a drink in 16 months. It helps that I am thrifty, so saving money is a significant motivator for me. Story 32. I am somewhat into Scotch whiskey, but I have barely touched my collection of approximately 12 bottles since focusing on my running. Maybe 1 dram every 2 weeks. Story 33. I am 35 and cannot imagine drinking enough to keep track of it on a weekly basis. I have 2 bottles of nice whiskey that I have been making my way through for about the past 5 to 6 months, and both are still about half full. Story 34. I'm in my 40s. I own about $5,000 worth of liquor. I owned $4,000 worth of liquor 4 years ago. I haven't consumed or bought any liquor in the meantime, but the dollar value of the bottles I have increased. My tastes in bourbon are very expensive. I only drink single barrel, cask strength, at room temperature with no ice, which means I drink it very rarely. I usually don't drink at all unless my shoulder acts up and starts giving me pain, making it impossible to sleep. Then I drink 3 or 4 high alcohol by volume beers and go to bed. Other than that, I drink a few cans of Coors Original or Pilsner Urquell, or a few bottles of Trappist ale with seafood. That's it. I don't wake up with a hangover from that. The only thing that gives me hangovers nowadays is if I decide to be careless and eat a pint of ice cream right before bedtime. It always gives me a morning headache. Story 35. I used to drink a lot in my 20s and did not really know when to stop. Now I am 37. I might have 1 drink a week on a Friday or during the weekend, maybe 1 or 2 with a meal. Otherwise, I just stick to fizzy water. Story 36. I am 32 years old and consume barely any alcohol weekly. I only really drink in social settings, which are not as frequent as they used to be now that we have young children. Story 37. I drink twice a month. Sometimes I have 3 liters of beer, sometimes 2 liters of red wine. I do not care to test my limits. I just drink as much as anyone else at the table. We enjoy some good food along with it, and then I return home. I drink a lot of water, so I am not worried about dehydration. Story 38. I stopped drinking 10 years ago for the exact reason you mentioned. The hangovers became severe and seemed to occur regardless of the amount of alcohol I consumed. On the wrong night, even a single beer could be enough. The dread of what the drink might do to me the next morning killed my enjoyment. Story 39. They are still getting worse at 42. I very rarely drink now, maybe a single drink for social occasions. If I drink more than that, I am dead the next day. I started taking a supplement called N-acetylcysteine. It is supposed to help. I take it before, during, and after drinking, and it seems to make a difference. I am not sure if it is age or the fact that we are usually totally worn out by the weekend from work. Story 40. I will drink on special occasions 2 to 3 times per year. I stopped drinking regularly at age 22 because the hangovers were not worth it, and I was no longer around people who drank regularly. Story 41. 1 to 2 tall beers a day after work. 27 male. On weekends, it depends on what I am doing. When cleaning and cooking, I might have around 3 beers. When golfing, I lose count. Story 42. Boring 35-year-old here. I quit drinking on January 1st. Before that, it was probably a bit too much. I would go through a few bottles of wine and a bottle of 100 proof bourbon a week. Story 43. 40 years old. Living in eastern Nebraska. I work a blue-collar job that requires long hours and lots of stamina, but I make a very good salary doing it. As you might imagine, some stress is involved with any blue-collar job, so when I get home, a couple of drinks are not out of the question. The hangovers are manageable as long as I plan the night before. This includes drinking water between drinks, taking a couple of Tylenol before going to bed, and knowing my limits. Some days, though, you just have to tie one on, and a hangover is unavoidable. I can tell in those moments that I am definitely not in my 20s anymore. Those hangovers last a couple of days with headache, nausea, and stomach aches. Every time I feel that bad, I tell myself I will never drink that much again, but eventually I do. Story 44. The hangovers keep getting worse. However, hangovers are different for different people. I am 40 years old and 4 drinks will have absolutely no effect on me the next day. After 6 drinks, I will feel a little unwell, but I have to consume around 10 or more to really feel bad. This is with straight whiskey or beers. Wine is somewhat different. Story 45. I stopped drinking to the point of getting drunk in my 30s because of the hangovers and stopped drinking entirely for health reasons in my 40s. Story 46. I am 27 years old. I will have one, maybe two beers during the work week. On the weekends, I will have around 2 beers and a cocktail if available. Story 47. Me. In my 30s, I get lightly drunk a couple of times a year, not 12 drinks in one night. The rest of the time, I typically have a couple of drinks a week or none. If I get kind of drunk, like 4 or more drinks, the next day I feel basically dead. Good hydration with electrolytes throughout the night will help significantly. Also, taper your drinking earlier in the night. It is not just the quantity but also how much you impact your sleep quality. The more sober you are by bedtime, the better. Story 48. 32. Probably 1 to 3 drinks per day. I have never been drunk and waited until age 21 to actually drink. I have a light constitution and can feel the effects after the first few sips. Habitual drinking is something I inherited from my mother's side of the family. Story 49. I am over 50 years old and I only drink about once a month, if that. I do not care for the taste of most alcoholic drinks. When I do drink, it is socially and I choose a fruity, sweet drink that will affect me strongly because I am a lightweight anyway. Story 50. During my sobriety challenge, which lasted 1/4 of the year, I consumed 0 drinks. Otherwise, I probably average around 12 to 15 drinks per week. Story 51. I drink 2 tall boys when I go fishing, sometimes twice a week, sometimes once every 3 weeks. I have wine at a family dinner or champagne at a wedding, but it is not part of my daily life. Between the ages of 18 and 21, I was drinking excessively. I am thankful I found my way early on. Story 52. Mid-30s. I have a couple of drinks on the weekends, usually with friends or while out and about. I can still party, even close down the bar. I usually feel pretty terrible the next day, not to the point where I can't get off the couch or it lasts for days afterwards, but enough that it keeps me from doing it often. Story 53. I am 26 years old. I have not had a drink in almost a year. I only drink to catch a buzz when I am with people. When I do drink, it is usually 2 to 3 drinks of hard liquor. Story 54. Provided you are not susceptible to addiction, the news is good in that you can start to regulate your consumption. I am 57 and really enjoy alcohol, especially cocktails. But I have just had enough of feeling terrible the day after a big session. That feeling forces itself into your consciousness when you are out drinking, and you end up just switching off. Now, a big night for me is a beer and 1 or 2 glasses of wine, literally because I do not want to feel wrecked the next day. Story 55. I have 2 to 3 beers each day. On weekends, I drink much more if friends are free. I don't really get hangovers unless I'm having wine or cocktails, but nothing that I didn't experience in college. I offset the weight gain by running long distances each day. Story 56. I am 22 and rarely drink alcohol. I never understand the hype, and when I am interested in drinking, it is usually wine. Story 57. I am 25 and do not drink. I will only have a single glass on a holiday or if family offers a drink. I do not really like the flavor, and getting intoxicated holds no appeal for me. It is something I would only consider doing to be polite. Story 58. I am 44 years old and do not drink alcohol at all. I can literally count on one hand the number of alcoholic drinks I have had in my lifetime. Story 59. I never drink during the week. Something I save for the weekend. I feel like it would lose its appeal if I drank on weekdays after work. I'll usually have a few drinks on Saturday nights. Maybe a few strong rum and cokes and a beer or 2. Usually just sipping over several hours and getting a light buzz. Either by myself or with a friend or 2. Sometimes a few weeks will go by where I don't drink at all. On the other hand, sometimes it might be a bit more often, like if I'm on vacation or on hot summer days or around the Christmas holidays. But on those occasional times when I do drink a lot in one go, I'm perfectly fine the next day. I've only ever had a few hangovers in my life, and they weren't really that bad. Story 60. Late 20s. I would say 4 to 10 drinks a week, more towards 10 when I am drinking socially, and around 4 throughout the week, such as beer or a glass of wine here and there. I drank a couple of glasses of wine the other night and woke up with a pounding headache in the middle of the night. That really did not happen before. I think age definitely makes it worse. But Advil and liquid intravenous therapy still help a lot. Story 61. I am 27 years old. I only drink on special occasions such as birthdays, weddings, or when I am traveling. I dislike the feeling of being hungover, and it takes me a day or two to recover, so I avoid drinking to that point. When I do drink, I try to stick to one type of alcohol. Electrolyte packets are very helpful before a night of drinking. Story 62. I am 38 years old. I have a few drinks the night before a day off, but I usually do not get hungover unless I am going wild for a special occasion. I also drink a lot of water most days, about 1.5 to 2 gallons per day, so hangovers are not common. I can have 3 to 4 beers and a whiskey and have no issues the next morning. Story 63. I am 37 years old. I don't really drink except for my anniversary or other important dates. I quit drinking for 5 years after my divorce. Story 64. My doctor suggested I should drink more, specifically red wine. I will have a glass every few months. Story 65. I am 46 years old and do not drink alcohol at all. I have not consumed alcohol for almost a decade. I find alcohol very uninteresting. When people talk about wine, I wonder how they could be so amazed by the juice of a rotten grape. It is bizarre to me. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.